Hi, friends. This is Michelle Tracy from the Migraine Warrior, and I am here this morning or this afternoon, depending upon what neck of the woods you're in, with Jenni Grover from ChronicBabe.com.
Mhm.
And you may know her as the original Chronic Babe, and she runs a community, an online community for chronic babes. Sometimes we call them sick chicks. Who are looking to be AWAP, which basically means living and being as well as possible. And Jenni just wrote a book called Chronic Babe 101, which I'm really excited about. It has been a dream of hers for a really long time. So not only do I want to talk a little bit about the content of the book, but I want to talk a little bit about what it's like to be a chronic babe and write a book, because that's something I've been interested in too. So I'm going to throw it over to Jenni for a minute and let you introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about what being a chronic babe means and what it means for you, and sort of how you came up with that term in general.
Sure. Well, Michelle, thanks for having me today. And I really appreciate you letting me talk with your community, which is really my community too, because we're kind of all in this together. So I got diagnosed 20 years ago with fibromyalgia, and a handful of diagnoses followed that. So Raynaud's phenomenon and asthma, anxiety, depression, IBS, hypothyroid, it's a total like crazy fun party in this body. And the first 2 years after I got diagnosed, I was 25 when that happened. And I really was like pissed off and very frustrated and didn't know what my life was going to look like. And everybody was telling me it was going to be terrible. And I just didn't feel like I wanted to accept that.
Mm-hmm.
So after a while, I started to kind of get into more of acceptance and coping better, and blogging was really getting big. So I decided I would write a blog about my experiences and try to help people and build some community. This is back before any social media, no Facebook or YouTube or anything. We were just all trying to meet each other through blogs. And it was really fun. I started building community and meeting people. And I called the project Chronic Babe because I wanted to remind myself and everybody else that I was talking to that you could still be an awesome, hot, cool babe even if you have chronic illness. And also the term chronic, I also thought of it as like chronically, like forever. So you're kind of forever a babe.
I love that.
Right? So like no matter what happens, no matter what, like inside you, outside, whatever, you're still a babe. And so I needed that reminder every day, and people in my community really wanted it. So that's where the name came from. I actually did a focus group with about 20 or 25 women with chronic illness to try to find out like what names would work for them. At first, I got a lot of traffic from people who thought it was a porn site, which is hilarious to me. I'm sure there's a
We'll
site.
get to that though, because you have a nice pep squad interview that we'll talk about that
That's
I
right.
that I
Yeah,
love.
that's right.
But, so yeah, started out that way, and then
Yeah, and a lot of people thought it was about medical marijuana or not medical marijuana.
Mhm.
And I mean, I am like, whatever works for you is great, but I had to tell a lot of people like it's not that chronic, it's chronic illness.
Yes.
But yeah, so I've been doing this for a little, I don't know, it's been like 12 and a half years now, which is a long time.
Mhm.
Um, it's like a lifetime in internet years.
Oh yeah.
And it's been kind of cool to see how it evolved. In the book, which is so fun to me, is the thing I worked on for a few years, and it's something I wanted to do for a long time. So it's such a beautiful thing to put that out there.
Well, so in terms of Chronic Babe and the book, I got involved with the book back when it was a Kickstarter situation, because I was really excited because, like you, even though some of our conditions overlap and illnesses overlap, but not all of them. And I felt like, there wasn't something out there that was really speaking to me in the way that this kind of book
Yeah.
was. So the first thing I want to sort of be really clear about is that this book and the Chronic Babe community speaks to all chronic illnesses, not just fibromyalgia or just migraines or just anything. It really, I feel like it encompasses all of the community. And the other thing is that I know that we use the term Chronic Babe, we use sick chicks, and in the the Secret Club, your subscription service,
Mm-hmm.
it's all women. But I've heard you talk about that Chronic Babe can be men too,
Mm-hmm.
or can be folks who are transitioning. Or I feel like it
Oh,
really
yeah.
it transcends any kind of gender identity. I feel like anybody can be a Chronic Babe. Is that something that you?
Yeah, I'm so glad that that's how you interpret it and that's how you feel about it, because that's really true. When I started the project, I felt the real lack of acceptance and community for women, especially young women
Mhm.
who had illness, because there is a lot of bias about young women who have chronic illness, and especially mental
Mhm.
illness or invisible illness. We get a lot of that, like you're hysterical, it's all in your head, you're on the rag. Like everybody has all these things that they say that are literally thoughtless and not appropriate and not right. And
Mhm.
so when I started writing it, I felt it was super important to focus on women and young women in particular. I
Mhm.
have aged out of my original demographic. So originally I was like, I'm going to write to like 18 to 40, and I'm like, I'm 45. So um, clearly I believe that this is an attitude, and it's a thing that you can carry with you. And so, yeah, I actually have a lot of men who write to me and say they want to be part of the community, and they are absolutely welcome. I definitely have a lot of people who are part of the community who are trans, and people who identify across the gender spectrum. So it's totally open. It's really more about an attitude, but like as a straight white cisgendered female,
Mhm.
like I can't really speak from other people's perspective.
Sure.
But I definitely welcome all those perspectives. I'm trying to bring more of those voices into my work as much as I can.
Mhm. And I hear you also saying that it doesn't matter how old you are. You can be,
Oh yeah.
80 and be a
Mhm.
Chronic Babe, and you can be 18 and be a Chronic Babe. That it's
Yeah.
sometimes we hear babe and we think young, or we think
Yeah.
look a certain way. And I feel like a lot of the reason you used that was to help people understand that anybody can be a
That's right.
babe. But
That's right.
I just wanted to make sure before we started sort of diving into the book that everybody watching knows that
Yeah.
you got that Chronic Babe in you. And
Yeah.
what I sort of feel like this book does is not so much teach you how to be a Chronic Babe, but teach you how to discover the Chronic Babe that's already
Oh,
inside of you.
yes, that's right. I feel that is so right on the money.
So
Michelle, you got to
that's,
be my hype man. You got to
I
be.
know. And what I love about the book, which as we've talked, it's called Chronic Babe 101: How to Craft an Incredible Life Beyond Illness. And it says here at the top, hundreds of resources for sick chicks like you. And what I love about it is that it's set up in a framework, like you're taking a class or like you're going back to school, but you can't fail and you can't. It's not scary. Jenny's not gonna, give you a report card with an F on it or something, unless it's for fabulous. And it's in really bite-sized sections. I feel like that are easy to digest, easy to come back to use in a reading group. And so that's just sort of basically how the book is set up. Why did you choose to use that framework for the book?
Well, I think about how I would structure something that I would want to learn. And I do really well with those kind of like bite-sized nuggets that you talked about. So it was important to me first to think about it. It's not complete compartmentalization, because I think all these things overlap with each other. But I wanted to think about it as like, if a person was really struggling and they really wanted to just read about boundaries, or if they were really struggling and they wanted to think about specifically about work, how could I set up the project so that they could find just what they need quickly and identify it and work with it? The school framework, the Chronic Babe 101, you can see my pom-poms are sitting on the
Yes.
bookshelf above me. I should have grabbed those down to cheer for you. I really wanted to give that feeling of like, we're all learning, we're constantly learning. And so this is your framework for learning. And part of the project, it's not just the book, there's also a website that has all the audio interviews, because I did 11 expert interviews in the book. The full audio of all those interviews and transcripts is available on the website at chronicbabe101.com, and also a series of videos, and there's a few instructional PDFs. And there's places in the book where you can write. If you're working on an exercise, there's
I
blank.
love those places that where you can just write in the book and make it feel like it's yours.
I really want people to do it. I want people to, scribble in it. I want them to draw in it. Of course, now I can't find the exact page I'm trying to flip because I'm, on camera. But anyway, there's great stuff in here. I really wanted to structure it as a chance for you to design how you want to learn. So some people may want to read the book cover to cover, or they may want to read one chapter and then go look at a PDF or listen to a recording. It's really up to you. And I wanted to provide that framework, but also have it be flexible.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about the interviews, which were one of my favorite parts of the book, sort of these pep squad interviews. Can you tell us a little bit about what the Pep Squad is and what those interviews are about?
Sure. Well, the Pep Squad for me was bringing in more expert voices. Like there's lots of stuff that I know and lots of people that I know, but I don't know everything and I can't speak from certain voices. So the Pep Squad includes a couple of doctors, psychologists, a sexuality expert, a career coach, an executive coach who talks about communication and difficult conversations, a pharmacist who talks about building relationships with your pharmacist, which is not a thing
That's
I really,
huge.
I've not really thought of that really that carefully, and talking with him was so interesting because we can gain so much by doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt it was really important to bring in all those voices. And I also interviewed a lot of caregivers. So there's little sidebars throughout that have like first person kind of caregiver perspectives, because they often get left out of the equation in the conversation. So I thought it was important for caregivers, if they read the book, they're going to learn about what our experience is, like what you and I live with and what we do to cope. And Chronic Babes can read the book and kind of also get some perspective on what a caregiver feels, because their feelings really matter. They're impacted as much as we are, just like differently.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah, the caregiver perspectives. I was going to mention that next, because those were really, even having been, a chronic babe myself for over 13 years now, they were really eye-opening perspective, even for me to read and hear what they had to say. So those are, these sort of little nuggets, but they're really powerful and important and succinct. And I know that, for instance, my mom really liked seeing herself represented, not herself specifically, but, seeing that other people have those feelings too. And I'm not a bad person if I feel frustrated, or if I feel, angry that this is happening to somebody that I love, or things like that. So I think that's really valuable, which is why I want everybody in my life to read it, not just me.
I can send you an extra copy.
I know, right? That's mine is already so what's it called? Dog-eared, when you flap things down.
Good. That's a beautiful thing. I love it.
But so there were two Pep Squad interviews that I really loved in particular. One I alluded to earlier was the one, and I want to make sure that I'm saying her name correctly, Avon Whitney.
It's actually Evian.
Evian, okay. Yeah. And she was the sensuality and sexuality sort of expert interview that you did, and that's a topic that I feel like gets glossed over or gets shied away from a lot in the chronic illness community. A lot of people, including people with chronic illnesses, are sometimes not comfortable seeing themselves that way, or can't see themselves that way. So can you talk a little bit about your decision to include such a bold sort of chapter and interview about self-love in the
Yeah, sure. Well, she, Evian, I've been following her work for quite a few years now, and she, I think, is really groundbreaking. She is a really incredibly generous person when it comes to sharing her personal experience with sensuality and sexuality. And I thought that would be great to have her perspective. She doesn't necessarily live with chronic illness, but she understands what it's like to struggle and then to work to get in touch with your own sensuality. And I think as people with illness, we often forget that we have this other positive sense mechanism in our body, because we can feel like everything is broken and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
When we can get back in touch with the positive senses and the things we can gain, it helps us get grounded, and then things feel more balanced. And it's not so much about I'm hurting all the time. It's like I'm hurting, but also the sweater is really soft, or wow, I really had a hard time walking today, but I'm able to really snuggle with my partner or whatever. So I feel like that is super important. And you're right, we don't talk about it a lot in our community. There's a few great bloggers doing great work, like this woman named Rose who does the blog Hedonish, which is Hedonish. And then there's another woman, Kirsten, who does Chronic Sex blog. So those are two people who are doing really good work in this area, I think. But I mean, those are the only two that really come to mind. And that's a dearth of experience there. Like we have hundreds of thousands of women just in the United States alone. And I can only think of two other bloggers who talk about it.
Right.
So we can do better. And I felt like it was really important for me to do better and bring that into the book.
Well, in support groups too, it's not even, I mean, some people I find feel like they are not sort of sexual or sensual beings anymore, but they also, and you touch on this a little bit too, feel like other people aren't going to be able to see them as those as the sexual and sensual beings, but also just as partners, because, oh, I can't work, or because, oh, I can't do this. And so that, I mean, the book as a whole talks a lot about sort of reclaiming that and getting back who you are as a person. But that particular chapter on self-love is one, it's something that I struggle with. And so it's probably that's why I locked in on it. One of the other things is that you recently turned me on to Uncustomary Mary.
Oh yeah,
in England. Who does some really great work with body positivity stuff. So she's a really excellent source for that kind of stuff too. The other Pep Squad interview that I loved was the one with Toni Bernhard. I absolutely love her work. She's an author, for those of you who don't know, who writes for, is it Psychology Today? Is that?
That's right, for Psychology Today, yeah.
And then she has her books. And so how did you hook up with Toni? Like, how did that?
That's a good question. I don't remember how I met Toni, but I've known her for many years. It is quite possible that I wrote her a gushing fan letter. To do that.
We all have done that at one time or another.
Right? So she has 3 books, and the first one that I read was How to Be Sick. And she has a couple other books that are also they're all great. Her columns at Psychology Today are great. She and I we get each other on a spiritual level too, because we're both Buddhists, and we definitely think about chronic illness from that perspective a lot of the time. And so I thought it was really good to bring in her perspective, one, to show how in some way that spirituality can be tied into how we think about our illness, that we can use it to help us process some of the difficult things we go through. And she also just is an incredible teacher on the concept of acceptance, which is the first lesson in the book, which to me is the most important and probably the most difficult lesson of all. And it's a process, it's not a thing you learn and you're done. It's a practice is really the word I want to use. It's a thing we're constantly working on. And I think that Toni is a great ambassador of that, because she's a person who rarely leaves her bed, who's been sidelined significantly by illness. And yet she's managed to figure out a way to teach people to write things that change the world. So what better ambassador for Chronic Babes and acceptance? I couldn't find anybody that could do better than Toni. And she's just fun. I just really love her.
She really is. She's amazing. I mean, I've read the How to Be Sick. The one that I really like is her most recent one, which is How to Live Well with chronic pain and illness. And it's a Buddhist-inspired guide, like you were saying. So you talk a bit about Buddhism in the book. Toni talks about them in her books. But I still feel like it's a really secular way to approach Buddhism. Like, it's not like oh, you can't do this if you have Christian faith or Jewish
Right.
faith or Muslim faith, or
Right. Right.
um, and I think it's really important too that you've brought mindfulness into the book, because I feel like mindfulness has gotten really trendy,
It
and
has.
some people are pushing it away, saying like, I'm not just going to think myself better or something like.
Right.
And I feel like you give, a lot of basic tools that sort of show you that, this can make a difference. Is it going to cure you? No. But might
Right.
it bring your pain level down or your
Yeah.
anxiety level down? I
Yeah.
mean, we can all use, going down from a 9 to a 7.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, and there's so much about, for me, I mean, you definitely don't have to be a Buddhist to read Tony's work and get a ton out of it.
Right.
Like, you're not missing anything if you are not a Buddhist. It's not like that. It's just that she's taking those ideas and showing you how we can apply them to life with chronic illness. So I have a lot of friends who are Christian who've read her books and love her work. And I have a lot of other friends who are Christian or Jewish or other faiths who do excellent work on chronic illness. I think that, my personal perspective is from Buddhism, but and really, truly, I mean, just the basic tenets of there is suffering and there is a path to alleviate suffering is just like, even when I just think of it now, I feel a little bit better. Knowing that is a thing. So, I really, for me, that path has been so exceptionally important. And I think that for anyone, whatever your faith is, and even if you're an atheist, if you can get to a place of acceptance at all, if you can think about the fact that there are some things out of your control and accept that and work with it, then you're headed down the right path, whatever it is for you.
And I think that's so true. And I love that you started. The first lesson is it all starts with learning to practice acceptance. And I love that you talk about Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's stages of grief, because I feel like a lot of people, even people who've had chronic illnesses for a long time, but especially people who are new to chronic illness, don't realize that it's okay and normal, if we're going to use that word, to go through a grieving process,
Yeah.
and to miss what you used to be able to do, and to sometimes be frustrated to have to come up with new accommodations.
Yeah.
And so I feel like starting the book in that way, and also you did a great job with showing how it's not linear.
Oh, yeah, that's so
You could just
important.
ping back and forth for pretty much ever with those. And some days it might feel like acceptance, and other days you might feel like you're back in, anger or something like that. And so, and you said even just a minute ago that you feel like acceptance is sort of a lifelong process. Like we're always sort
Yeah.
of pursuing that. Does it get easier having been a chronic babe for as long as you have
Yeah.
been?
Oh, yeah, it definitely gets easier. I still have I had a moment last weekend where I cried really hard for a while about a pain that was flaring up because I had plantar fasciitis 15, 16, 17 years ago, and it was so bad I had trouble walking more than a couple blocks at a time. I mean, it really changed my life in a very significant negative way. And it took years to recover from that. And last weekend, my right foot decided to start hurting in that exact same kind of sensation. And I panicked. I totally freaked out. I had a lot of anger and resentment, and I was really scared, and I was really sad because it's like, you can tell by my Christmas tree that we're getting close to Christmas here. It's like the end of the year. I'm going on vacation for the first time in years. I want to feel well. And I was like, damn, am I going to feel like crap for my vacation? So I definitely had a breakdown, but all those years of practice mean that I didn't spin into like a days long wallowing. It was like an hour, which is actually pretty long even for me. But I had my husband saying to me, like, listen, let's talk this through. Let's be logical about it. Let's apply what you've learned. I talked to friends about it. I touched base with people. I did some reading. I meditated. So I've built all these tools. I've learned all these practices over the years. And even just having lived with pain for so many years, I know that pain comes and goes for me. So my foot is actually a lot better today. Now, I've also been super proactive because I went and got new insoles. I've had 2 acupuncture treatments. I'm taking an anti-inflammatory. I'm stretching. I'm icing. I mean, I'm doing the whole thing. But that's part of the practice, is accepting that, okay, yeah, my foot might hurt on vacation. And there might be things I can do less of, or activities I have to skip, but I'm still going to go. And I'm not going to let it ruin my entire vacation. It's just not going to happen. If you'd caught me 15 years ago, I definitely wouldn't have had that attitude. And I think that having that practice of acceptance, of saying, okay, this is here. I don't know how long it's going to be here. I'm going to do what I can. But I'm going to accept that it may be not ideal. That practice and being able to do it meant I'm able to slide into that attitude pretty quickly, instead of taking days or weeks to get there.
And I feel like this is so Jenni right here. Like this is exact. It's so many things, because you're so transparent and honest and genuine about your experiences. You're not all sunshines and rainbows, but you also don't get stuck down, in the pity party. Like, you understand there's a time and a place for both those things.
Yeah.
And even just the things that you just sort of ticked off on your hand with, stretching, meditating, acupuncture, anti-inflammatory. I mean, you've got Eastern and Western medicine, you've got spirituality, you've got fitness, you've got all kinds of stuff, which I feel like the book also does a really good job of showing how you are teaching us to bring all those aspects together, to not put all of our eggs in this basket or that one.
Well, I mean, we're complex creatures, right? We have so many aspects to who we are. You know this, you live in a human body, you know that you have just like a wild range of emotions that can happen. You have people in your life who are super supportive, and people who are like, eh, and you have days where you feel really great and days where you feel like shit, or maybe you have mostly days where you feel like okay, and you have some highs and lows. You have things that go right, and you have things that go wrong. There are months as a freelancer that I make a really great living, and there are months where I'm like, oh my God, what's going to happen? I mean, we're on the ocean, right? And you can either like try to swim through a wave and fight it, or you can like learn to surf,
right?
Go with it, So I do think that it's important for us to bring in all these different aspects of caring for ourselves and being in the world and being in our community. It can feel overwhelming, especially if you're more of an introverted person, or if you've been isolated by your illness. It can feel, I think for some people, I've been told that, and I feel this way sometimes, but rarely, but I hear a lot that it can feel overwhelming, because people are like, so I'm supposed to get good at the gym and good at eating and good at relationships and good at spirituality and good at, So what I try to tell people is like, baby steps, take it one step at a time, like I've had practice with my foot. I've had almost 2 decades of practice with these feet. So I know the 5-6 things I got to do today, but if it's new for you, you may not know yet, but you'll get there. And so having the tools that I talk about in here helps you get that confidence and know that you can get there. And we're all still constantly learning. I mean, there's things I put in this book that now I'm like, I would go back and change that a little bit, or, not like big things, but
right.
We're always learning. We're always going to learn new techniques and new practices and things that help. So staying open and curious. I like to cultivate kind of a childlike behavior. It's actually really, I can't even help it. I like fart jokes.
You're very playful and
yeah. And part of that childlike behavior is curiosity, a sense of like, it's really easy for us to get caught up in our symptoms and our struggles and write a story for ourselves and decide that this is how it's going to be. And when we can drop that a little bit and get curious and go, I wonder what's going to happen now, it takes some of the stress out of it. and it
Mhm.
opens you to all these possibilities. So then you are open to trying other things like
Mhm.
what Eastern medicine or diet or essential oils for, whatever aromatherapy that you want or whatever.
Mhm.
When you get open, there's so many opportunities to help yourself feel better. And that
Mhm.
goes back to the sensuality stuff and the relationship stuff. And I mean, it's all tied in.
Yep, it's very, very true because I find myself often really open to all the negative possibilities
Oh, yeah.
and not as open to the. So when I'm able to expand my view a little bit more, I find out that like the story that I've written, there are some alternate endings that could actually be in there that might be okay and not the sky is falling.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I definitely can fall into that negative territory. I am a champion catastrophizer. I will go to the mat with anybody but that's like a skill I've been trying to unlearn.
yes, yeah.
You know?
Oh goodness. Well, just I could talk to you about the actual content of the book forever, but I'm trying to be mindful of both of our time. I just wanted to talk real quick about what it was like to actually write a book as a chronic babe.
Yeah, really hard. It is the hardest thing I've ever done professionally. It was so difficult. I don't want to say that to tell people, like scare people from trying it themselves, but you deal with so much emotion. I mean, and this work for me is so personal, right? So I was very married to an outcome, which is not a thing that you aim to do when you're a Buddhist. You're not supposed to be grasping all the time. You're supposed to be letting go. And I was like, I gotta write this book. It's gonna be perfect. Like, that doesn't really serve us, right? So I learned some very important lessons about that. Once as I was finishing it, because it took a lot longer than I thought it would, and you know that you were a Kickstarter backer, it definitely came out a lot later than I thought it would. And I appreciate your support and everybody's support.
It was worth it. It was well worth the wait.
Thank you so much. It was really tough. And those last 6 months were like a big push. So my husband is in grad school and he has the summers off. And so I knew that during the summer, he could take on more of the household things that I had been doing while he's in school. And so I knew I had more of a cushion to work on it. And we made an agreement about how I would work on it and what that would look like in our household. And, so he was super supportive, but those last 6 months were like, I mean, I was working really long days almost every day. And it was really challenging, but it was worth it because I wanted to create something that could really help people and really change their lives. And it's something I'm super passionate about. And we have a lot of people in our community who can't be online all the time. So print book is a great alternative for them. And I think that's really important to remember that those options are available to us. Plus, I always envisioned myself having a book, my name on the cover and my little face on the back.
I know. I love it. Well, and that's part of the reason that I'm so glad that we're actually doing this now is because holidays are going on right now. Hanukkah, Christmas is coming up. But this is a great book for the new year, too. It's a great book for yourself. It's a great book for family members and or just anyone. Like I'm going to get some copies for my doctor's office. And we're going to try to do a little book group because this book really lends itself to a book group style reading. And so
I appreciate you saying that too, because I wrote, if you go to the ChronicBabe101.com site,
yes.
There's a reading group guide because I knew that people were going to want to discuss it with each other. And I'm probably going to do a little online book club thing. But I haven't quite figured out the logistics, but a little teaser.
Always good for teasers. Always good. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to our communities, which some overlap, some don't as much. Do you have anything, any message that you would just like to put out there, maybe to people who don't know you yet or are just starting the chronic illness journey? What would you like them to sort of take away from this?
Well, I really appreciate you giving time and space to this. I'm so thankful. I think a big thing along those lines is community. Um, you can't do this alone. And that's why I started this work in the first place. It's like, I'm really lucky. I get to meet people like you, Michelle, and all these other wonderful advocates and people who aren't even, they're not doing advocacy work, but they're like accidental advocates every day because they're going out into the world and showing people that you can have chronic illness and still be awesome and kick ass and contribute.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the biggest thing I would tell people is embrace community, embrace the opportunities to learn from each other, build those connections. You definitely are not alone. I'm here for you. Michelle's here for you. we have all these great people online that we can build relationships with to support each other and learn from each other. We're all really different. And when we're open, like I was talking about curiosity, when we're open to the possibility that someone new can teach us something, it can really change your life, just like meeting Tony Bernard or other people has for me. So I'm really thankful. I'm here to answer any questions that people have. You can get in touch with me through my website at chronicbabe.com. And there's tons of free stuff at chronicbabe101.com for the book. So if you're getting ready to, if you're working on some change in the new year, you got a textbook right there.
Definitely. And I'll put in just a quick plug that you also have sort of a subscription service, which is the Secret Club, which, you know, it's the only subscription I actually belong to. I don't have a lot of extra stuff laying around, but I figured out a way to make that work because the Secret Club is a group of like-minded women who get a little bit more one-on-one access to Jenni. We get to talk with each other in the group, and we have different things that we sort of learn all together in the group. And so it's sort of like we have lessons each week. You know, some of the stuff that's in the book is similar to what we work on each week. Like, you know, right now we're working on holidays and chronic illness and all that entails. So if you're looking, you know, if you're looking at working on yourself in the new year, there is a ton of free stuff, like Jenni said. But I'd also recommend looking at the subscription service because it is it's very reasonably priced. It's totally worth it. I've been in it for quite a while now, so I think I would know. And so, yeah, there are a lot of options, both free and that cost a little so that we can keep Jenni being able to do this kind of.
Yes. Thank you for mentioning that.
Great.
Definitely. I mean, this is what I do. This is my full-time. It's full-time is a weird term for how I work, but this is my gig. You know, I've been lucky enough to shape my life in a way that my work is designed to help people like me. So the membership program is called the Secret Club, and you can go to chronicbabe.com/secret club, or you can just email me about it or whatever. It's easy to find online, and it's super fun. You get lots of instruction over a course of a month or a couple months. In this case, we did November and December on the holidays. And actually, in the new year, I'm going to be shifting how I deliver the content a little bit, which is going to make it even more affordable and open up to a lot more people. So I'm excited. It's going to be an interesting shift in the new year, but lots of cool additional stuff I can offer through this new platform. But
that's great.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun. I think I'm going to launch that in February or March, depending on how quickly I can get up to speed on the software and everything, you know?
Yes. All right. Well, that's great. Thank you so much again, Jenni, for talking with us. This has been great. I look forward to working with you and continuing to converse with you in the future. And I believe that you said you were going to help me do the tech part of this, which is to sort of get it online. So you'll be able to find it on my Facebook page, which is The Migraine Warrior. You'll also be able to find it on my blog, which is migrainewarriorblog.wordpress.com. Those are sort of the two main places that you'll be able to find it. And then are there places that you're going to be posting it as well, Jenni?
I will happily post this interview on all my social media platforms. So there's the Chronic Babe Facebook page, my blog. I'll probably link to it in my newsletter. So if you go to my site, you can sign up for my free newsletter. I'll probably mention it on Instagram. I mean, I'm all over the place, so I'll probably put it everywhere.
That's true.
Yeah.
It'll just be everywhere. You won't be able to get away from
That's
it.
right. Because you're such a fun interviewer too, so I really appreciate that, and I want as many people as possible to hear this conversation and get some.
Good. Good. Thank you so much, and I hope you are AWAP as well as possible. That you continue to be through the holidays and beyond.
Thanks. You too, Michelle. Mwah.
Okay. Bye, Jenni.
Bye.